The skies over Europe are now a front line, where the boundaries between peace and conflict are being tested every day. What once seemed like routine patrols have become high-stakes missions watched by millions across the continent. Russian jets and drones have repeatedly violated NATO airspace, especially over Poland and Estonia, sending a clear message that Moscow is willing to push the limits. These are not random mistakes. They're seen as deliberate provocations, calculated moves designed to test NATO's readiness and resolve, and to probe for weaknesses in the alliance's defenses. The continent is on high alert, with governments and citizens alike fearing that a single miscalculation could spark a direct and devastating conflict. In response, Poland and Estonia have declared they will shoot down any unauthorized Russian aircraft, making it clear that their airspace is not to be crossed without consequences. This is a clear warning to Moscow. Further violations will be met with force, not just words. Emergency meetings have been held at the UN and within NATO, as leaders scramble to prevent escalation while preparing for the worst. Poland's foreign minister warned that any breach would trigger a decisive military response, a stance echoed by other NATO members who have pledged solidarity and support. Diplomatic relations have hit a new low, and the risk of escalation is real, with every conversation between East and West now laced with suspicion and urgency. Every radar blip now causes anxiety in command centers from Warsaw to Brussels, as military leaders weigh the risks of action versus restraint. The old post-Cold War sense of security is gone, replaced by constant vigilance and a readiness to respond at a moment's notice. Rules of engagement are being rewritten in real time as commanders adapt to a rapidly changing and unpredictable threat environment. Fighter pilots are on edge, knowing their actions could have historic consequences, and that a single decision in the air could change the course of European history. This is Europe's new reality. Russian military hardware pushing boundaries, testing patience, and forcing NATO to remain constantly alert. The threat is no longer distant. It's immediate and overhead, a daily reminder that peace in Europe is fragile. NATO's unity is being tested like never before, as member states rally together to deter aggression and defend their shared values. The question is not if, but when the next incident will occur and how the world will respond when it does. The storm clouds are no longer gathering. They are here, casting a shadow over Europe's future and demanding constant vigilance from all. Tensions erupted dramatically when 19 Russian drones brazenly entered Polish airspace under the cover of darkness, sparking immediate concern. Polish air defenses responded swiftly, shooting several drones down. This marked a significant moment as it was the first time Russian drones were destroyed over NATO territory, escalating the situation. The wreckage was scattered across rural Poland, causing damage to homes and cars. Fortunately, there were no injuries reported, but the impact was deeply felt. The incident left no doubt this was a deliberate act, not a mere navigational error. The intent was clear and concerning. Polish and NATO officials quickly concluded that the drones were intentionally directed into Poland, signaling a bold move by Russia. The scale of the incursion, nearly 20 drones, suggested a coordinated test of NATO's defenses, challenging their readiness. Investigators meticulously combed the crash sites, confirming that the incursion was no accident, but a calculated provocation. For Poles, the war in Ukraine suddenly felt dangerously close, bringing the conflict to their doorstep. The illusion of NATO's protective shield was shattered, leaving citizens feeling vulnerable and exposed. The incident quickly became a focal point in the growing confrontation with Russia, drawing international attention. It demonstrated a new level of Russian provocation, showcasing their willingness to escalate tensions. The conflict was no longer just on the news, it was in their backyards, a stark reminder of the new reality. The message was clear: modern warfare ignores borders, challenging traditional notions of security. The drones were more than machines, they were warnings, signaling a shift in the geopolitical landscape. The risk of escalation had become real and personal, affecting everyday lives and heightening fears. NATO's response would set the tone for what came next as the alliance faced a critical test of unity and resolve. The world watched intently as the alliance faced its most direct challenge yet, with global implications. The stakes had never been higher, with the potential for further escalation looming large. The line had been crossed, marking a pivotal moment in the ongoing geopolitical struggle. The world reacted swiftly to the drone incursion over Poland. Leaders condemned Russia's actions as reckless and dangerous. Ukrainian President Zelensky called it a deliberate act of aggression, demanding stronger international action. The United Nations warned of the risk of regional catastrophe. Former US President Trump questioned Russia's motives, adding to the global outcry. The incident unified world leaders in their condemnation of Moscow. It was seen as a direct threat to regional stability and international security. Calls for unity and a firm response echoed across NATO. The alliance's solidarity was reinforced, and pressure mounted on Russia to de-escalate. Diplomats were summoned and stern statements issued. The event dominated headlines and forced governments to confront the reality of direct aggression. The question, how to respond without triggering all-out war. The drone incursion was more than a military event. It was a test of alliances and resolve. The world's eyes were on NATO. Russia denied any wrongdoing, dismissing the accusations as baseless. Moscow accused the West of escalating tensions and running a smear campaign. Russian officials claimed the drones were not under their control. Perhaps they malfunctioned or were Ukrainian in disguise. At the UN, Russia's representative rejected all evidence, calling it a provocation to drag NATO into conflict. President Putin signaled a desire to avoid escalation, but warned Russia would respond to threats with overwhelming force. The international community remained deeply skeptical. Poland and Germany pointed to a pattern of previous airspace violations. Russia's denials were widely seen as implausible. The Kremlin's strategy, plausible deniability, muddying the waters with counter-narratives. This information war aimed to paralyze NATO's decision-making. The real battle was over truth itself. As drone wreckage lay in Polish fields, the propaganda war raged on. Trust in Moscow was at an all-time low. NATO responded with a powerful show of unity and unwavering resolve, sending a clear message to both allies and adversaries alike. The United States and United Kingdom quickly pledged to defend every inch of NATO territory, reaffirming their commitment to collective security. The US ambassador warned that Russia's actions were either deliberate provocations or alarming signs of a military losing control, both scenarios deeply troubling for the alliance and the world. In response, NATO increased its vigilance, especially along its vulnerable eastern flank, reinforcing its presence and readiness. Air defense systems were rapidly strengthened in Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states, creating a formidable shield against potential threats. The downing of Russian drones proved NATO's defenses were active and effective, but also highlighted the ongoing need for constant vigilance and readiness. Article 5, the alliance's core principle, remained untriggered, but urgent consultations and high-level meetings began immediately. NATO sought to deter further aggression without escalating to full-scale war, balancing strength with restraint. More troops and advanced defense systems moved east, shifting the alliance's posture from reassurance to robust deterrence and preparedness. The message was unmistakable. The line is drawn, and it will be defended at all costs. The incident forced NATO to prove its security guarantees are real, not just words on paper, but backed by action. The alliance's credibility was on the line, with the world's eyes fixed on every move and decision. The shield was up, but in these tense times, it had to be stronger and more resilient than ever before. NATO's unity, forged through decades of cooperation, was its greatest weapon and source of strength. The world was watching closely, waiting to see what NATO's next decisive move would be in this critical moment. Analysts debated Russia's motives. Was Moscow testing NATO's defenses, or was it losing control of its military? Some saw the incursions as intelligence gathering and psychological warfare, meant to intimidate and sow discord. Others suggested technical malfunctions, but few believed nearly 20 drones could go off course by accident. The US ambassador outlined two possibilities: deliberate provocation or dangerous incompetence. Both scenarios were alarming. If deliberate, Russia was willing to risk direct conflict. If accidental, its military was unpredictable and unstable. The ambiguity was itself a strategy, keeping NATO guessing and stretching its resources. The drone showdown was a high-stakes chess move. NATO had to prepare for every scenario at once. The world tried to read Putin's intentions. The risks of miscalculation had never been higher. The next move could change everything. The airspace violations sparked demands for tougher action. Leaders argued that words were no longer enough to deter Moscow. Calls grew for stricter economic sanctions to cripple Russia's war machine. Military vigilance increased, with enhanced air surveillance along NATO's eastern flank. The incidents were a wake-up call for Europe's defense ministries. Investment in modern technology and rapid response became urgent priorities. Joint Russian-Belarusian drills raised fears of further provocations. The debate shifted from whether to respond to how. Options included more advanced air defenses and even no-fly zones. The risk of escalation was weighed against the danger of inaction. Europe was determined to build a deterrence too strong for Moscow to ignore. Europe is on edge, fearing the Ukraine war could spill into NATO territory. The downing of Russian drones over Poland made the threat real for millions. The risk of a broader conflict between Russia and NATO is no longer unthinkable. Each incident raises the chance of a catastrophic miscalculation. The security landscape has fundamentally changed. Old assumptions are gone. NATO's unity is now seen as essential for peace. Nations are boosting defense spending and rethinking policies. The psychological impact is profound. Air raid sirens, emergency kits, and talk of war have returned. The crisis is both military and social, shaking Europe's sense of safety. An entire generation faces the possibility of war on their soil. The continent holds its breath, hoping to avoid disaster. Vigilance is the new normal. The knife's edge is sharper than ever. The drone showdown is a symbol of a new era in Europe. A curtain of mistrust and military readiness now divides the continent. NATO stands united, while Russia challenges the order with force and provocation. Hopes of partnership with Russia have been replaced by confrontation. Diplomacy continues, but now with military resolve. The threat can no longer be ignored. NATO is rearming out of necessity. A long-term standoff seems inevitable, with resources diverted to defense. The dream of a peaceful, united Europe feels distant. The incident shattered illusions and forced a reckoning with reality. Europe's security architecture has been redefined. The continent is on guard, bracing for what comes next. The old world is gone. The new one is still being shaped.